variety of stakeholders to tackle the climate crisis. And I know firsthand that we still have gaps and that there's still a lot to do to build on the momentum that we have, but to really ramp up to get to the pace and scale that we need. And one thing that really is different now from 10 years ago, certainly even 5 years ago, is the amount of youth leadership in the movement. Since the signing of the Paris Agreement, there have been ups and downs in international climate politics, but one thing that has remained constant, and in fact not remained constant but grown, is that young people everywhere have been standing up to call for more ambitious action and to take part in ambitious action and to lead ambitious action everywhere, from the streets to the boardrooms, and now to increasingly having young people being part of official delegations as negotiators. So this is a whole of society problem. It is everybody. It's not an abdication to young people to solve the problem on their own, but we really need you to be working together with those of us who've been working on the problem for a while, to continue to be loud and vocal about what the science is saying that we require, to be specific about what policymakers need to do to play their role, and to be part of the solutions, whether you're working in civil society, in business, in government, or in any other function. This year, COP27 is going to be crucial because we have an opportunity to really see whether governments are going to come back to deliver on the promise they made collectively in the Glasgow Pact to really ratchet up the urgency. The science and our lived experience on the ground everywhere in the world is telling us that we really must make this the decade of delivery, that we have to take action now, not in 2030 or 2040 or 2050, but these next few years we have to halve emissions and restart building more resilience. And I think that makes this summit and your commitments very timely in helping to bring that intergenerational and intersectional perspective, opinion and experience into the collaborations, the innovations, the problem solving which drives solutions. And that problem solving often requires different perspectives to come together. And you all represent one thing that we need right now, that's asking the right questions and addressing gaps, holding those in decision-making power accountable, pushing them for increased action, and becoming those in decision-making power. I believe very strongly in what we call the ambition loop, that increased action from one part of society will drive more ambition from others, particularly from non-state actors in civil society and business, will make it more politically possible for national governments to be more ambitious and to make their commitments bolder, which in turn gives business and investors more certainty to be bolder. So we all have a role to play there. And what all of us as non-state actors do does influence what governments believe is possible in terms of domestic and international climate policy. And we know that climate change is a collective action problem. So no country, no institution, no sector, no generation can solve it alone. So let's continue to work through and strengthen the multilateral process that enables us to come together as a global family. And let's drive all of the non-state actor actions through the various collaborations and initiatives we have to tackle these challenges. Finally, I want to thank you for everything that you're doing and wish you a great day within your working groups. And let's keep driving faster and faster ambition and action together to tackle the climate crisis. The design and delivery of the 2022 edition of the National SDG Summit and Changemakers Award in Nigeria. Today I'm talking to you in my capacity as the UN High-Level Climate Action Champion for COP26 and my mandate to drive ambition and action for climate solutions across society. And as many of you will know, the role was created in Paris as part of the Paris Agreement to drive this ambition and action from non-state actors, so businesses, cities, regions, investors, universities, youth, faith groups, civil society, everyone who's not a national government. Because the governments who created the Paris Agreement recognise that we need the whole of society to implement the ambitious goals of the Paris Agreement to tackle the climate crisis. Now, I've spent many years working with a variety of stakeholders to tackle the climate crisis, and I know firsthand that we still have gaps, and that there's still a lot to do to build on the momentum that we have, but to really ramp up to get to the pace and scale that we need. And one thing that really is different now from 10 years ago, certainly even 5 years ago, is the amount of youth leadership in the movement. Since the signing of the Paris Agreement, there have been ups and downs in international climate politics, but one thing that has remained constant, and in fact not remained constant but grown, is that young people everywhere have been standing up to call for more ambitious action, and to take part in ambitious action and to lead ambitious action everywhere, from the streets to the boardrooms, and now to increasingly having young people being part of official delegations as negotiators. So this is a whole of society problem. It is everybody. It's not an abdication to young people to solve the problem on their own, but we really need you to be working together with those of us who've been working on the problem for a while, to continue to be loud and vocal about what the science is saying that we require, to be specific about what policymakers need to do to play their role, and to be part of the solutions, whether you're working in civil society, in business, in government, or in any other function. This year, COP27 is going to be crucial because we have an opportunity to really see whether governments are going to come back to deliver on the promise they made collectively in the Glasgow Pact to really ratchet up the urgency. The science and our lived experience on the ground everywhere in the world is telling us that we really must make this the decade of delivery, that we have to take action now, not in 2030 or 2040 or 2050, but these next few years we have to halve emissions and we start building more resilience. And I think that makes this summit and your commitments very timely in helping to bring that intergenerational and intersectional perspective, opinion and experience into the collaborations, the innovations, the problem solving which drives solutions. And that problem solving often requires different perspectives to come together. And you all represent one thing that we need right now, that's asking the right questions and addressing gaps, holding those in decision-making power accountable, pushing them for increased action, and becoming those in decision-making power. I believe very strongly in what we call the ambition loop, that increased action from one part of society will drive more ambition from others, particularly from non-state actors in civil society and business, will make it more politically possible for national governments to be more ambitious and to make their commitments bolder, which in turn gives business and investors more certainty to be bolder. So we all have a role to play there. And what all of us as non-state actors do does influence what governments believe is possible in terms of domestic and international climate policy. And we know that climate change is a institution, no sector, no generation can solve it alone. So let's continue to work through and strengthen the multilateral process that enables us to come together as a global family, and let's drive all of the non-state actor actions through the various collaborations and initiatives we have to tackle these challenges. Finally, I want to thank you for everything that you're doing and wish you a great day within your working groups, and let's keep driving faster and faster ambition and action together to tackle the climate crisis.
Okay, good morning, everyone joining us across the country. I believe it's a wonderful Friday morning at your very end, and I believe your week has been so productive indeed. I would just appreciate, Kenny, if you can hear me, you can use the comment section to confirm. I believe I'm very audible. Good morning once again. We welcome you to the third masterclass session of the Climate Actors Accelerator Programme. And we believe this is going to be another great and transforming session for you. This morning, I'll be your host and moderator. And as you all know, I'm Manuel Olaoluwoye by name. Many refer to me as Development Catalyst. And it's good to meet you all. First session will be on environment and ecosystem restoration, while the second session will be on pollution and waste management. And we are blessed to have experts and great industry leaders that are going to be sharing learnings and their work experience with us this morning. And for the first session, we are glad to have Ambassador Dr. Somi Oluwoshile, who is a sustainable professional and green ambassador and a climate activist. He is currently the chairman of the board of Sustainable Green Environment Initiative and also the president of African Network of Green Ambassadors, Nigeria host partner of Global We Project for Museum for the United Nations. And he is also the Nigeria country director for Foundation for Climate Restoration USA. He holds both bachelor's and master's degree from the Federal University of Technology, Akure, and a doctorate degree in sustainable growth from Commonwealth University. Ambassador Somi is a thought leader with experience in leading over 500 young professionals in more than 28 African countries. Ambassador loves playing the trumpet and dancing on keyboard. If Somi is not on the construction site, he's either playing his musical instrument or you find him acting for the nation. We are so glad to have you on this call, Dr. Somi. Thank you for joining this morning. Hello, good morning, sir.
Yes, hello, good morning. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you. Good morning. It's good to meet you this morning. I will facilitate today's session, sir.
It's nice to be on the call. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, sir. So just like I introduced, Ambassador Dr. Somi is going to be leading the session on environment and ecosystem restoration for the next 1 hour, and would like to have it over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm trying to see if I can connect with my other device so that I can share my screen.
All right, that's fine. So while we work on that, I will just quickly like to apologize to each and everyone that has been having some technical issues with some of those links. Definitely what's going to happen is we are going to be sharing the full version of those links with you, most especially the WhatsApp link, the program manager on that. We are going to share the main link, which was copied directly from WhatsApp. That's not an issue anyway. That's going to be resolved before the end of today. And regarding the attendance and evaluation form, I can assure you, you all are going to have access to do that before the end of today, before the end of the session. So please, if you have any other questions or very urgent area of concern, you can use the comment section to drop it. Ambassador starts.
Okay. Almost there.
All right, that's fine. That's fine, sir. So I believe we are all prepared. We have our notepads. We have these days now we don't write. We just use a desktop or a phone device to note things down. And most importantly, we are not just noting them down. We are also sharing the learning across on all other platforms whereby we are all connected with. Yeah, the climate education starts from here. And I also mentioned that we are going to talk more about the phase 2 of the project after the second masterclass session. So we are going to emphasize more, and we are going to give you more information in that regard. I know many of us are very eager to know what is being expected of us. And now I believe we all have access to the timeline, and we are keeping to that as well. So after the second masterclass session, we are going to have a detailed briefing in that regard. And please kindly stay on the call. It's very, very important. So we look forward to have each and everyone where we can discuss that. All right, we have your screen now. Over to you, sir.
Oh, okay, that's fantastic. Thank you. All right, once again, let me appreciate Emmanuel, sincere appreciation for inviting me to this very magnanimous and intriguing program that you have here at SDSN Nigeria. Okay, SDSN Youth Nigeria, right? And I'm happy to also be here to at least facilitate a masterclass on environment and ecosystem restoration. And that is exactly what I'll be talking on. My name is Somi Oluwoshile. And just as I've been introduced, I represent Sustainable Green Environment Initiative. So it will be very nice for us to go along together on this particular subject matter, environment and ecosystem restoration. First, I would like to probably just give us an overview of what ecosystem restoration itself.
Can you enable a full screen? We can see your next slide, but I feel we can enable a full screen without seeing your next slide, sir.
Okay. All right, let me just correct that.
All right, thank you very much, sir.
Okay, I think we have it. I think it's much better now. Okay,
absolutely, sir. Yes, thank you.
Talking about ecosystem restoration, I wanted to talk about it from the perspective here from Society for Ecological Restoration. And it was described as the process of intentionally altering a site to establish a defined indigenous historical ecosystem. The goal of the process and procedure is to emulate the structure, function, diversity, and dynamics of the specified ecosystem. I have a pictorial view on this particular slide, and it is Crissy Field, San Francisco, before restoration. And to my right, you can see Crissy Field, that same site after it has been restored. And I'm bringing up this definition to at least synchronize it with the pictorial view that we have. So probably might have an understanding of what the English language is all about, right? When you intentionally do something, it simply means that it wouldn't just do itself by itself, right? You have to put in some little effort to making sure that something is done. And that means you must be doing that with a goal in mind. And at this point in time, it is to alter a particular site that, that has already been in existence, right? And you want to alter it to be able to fit into a particular need that you have. And at this point, what we want to do is restore it back to either the way it used to be, because we have, by the virtue of what we do, or by the virtue of the activities that we carry out as human beings, we have altered that particular site. And you could see from my left that there are a lot of construction work that has actually happened on that site, and several things that happened there, pavements, concrete, quite a number of things. But then we actually made an intentional effort as human beings to see how we can get that particular site back to the way it used to be. And if you look at the other side, which is on the right, you see quite some few green grasses around the area. If you look at the left, it wasn't there. But when you look at the right, you see that. And also you'll see a water body also within the pictorial view on the right. So it simply means that we actually try as much as we could to give these particular sites a taste of restoration. It in itself means a state of the way the site could have been before it was hotter, before construction work was being put on that particular site. And that is just the pictorial view of ecosystem restoration. So in itself, ecosystem is the world in which we live in, the globe in itself. And the restoration part is that means in a way it has been altered and we have to kind of put it up to the earlier state in which it was for us to be able to at least have a taste of the way it used to be. And we will see the reason why the ecosystem restoration is actually important or it is needed. So I have just right here some few pictorial view as well. And these are just snippets from some of the happenings around the world. There are battalions of happenings in this regard, but here I just selected some few. Severe drought risk famine in Somalia, United Nations warns. Like these are some of the disasters that are happening by the virtue of what we have put up as human beings, the way we have impacted the ecosystem. So that means we have altered the ecosystem in a way. And several of these numerous news and things that we hear around the globe that are happening are beginning to emanate. Another one is Texas wildfire. It destroys 86 homes and most of small towns. Dallas Morning News gave the report of this. You know, another one is thousands of Australians flee homes as flood inundates town. These are just some of snippets of things that are happening. You know, battalions are more than there are some of things that are currently happening as part of disasters that are, in fact, I would say are more than this. Global flood loses its 82 billion last year. A study highlights UK risk. So that means flood risk by this analysis rather, it's 82 billion last year. That's just flooding. There are several other ones. The drought that we're talking about is not even included in here. The wildfire is not even included here. A lot of other things are not included here. That's also happening at the moment. And just very recently, last month, right, we have the Brazil flood. And they're told, this is just a news, and I think this even increased. But this was what was captured at that time. Rises to 48 as landslide Luther prevent aid reaching survivors. Just the landslide alone is about 48 people died for the landslide. A lot of homes were lost for the flooding, and quite a number of numerous things like somewhat like this are happening at the moment. And majorly, this can be attributed to human activities that has actually impacted our ecosystem. And here I just have a simple analysis for a report from the World Economic Forum. Said in the past 20 years, 7,348 disasters has been recorded. And if you look at all of this, the pointer still goes back to our alteration that we have done or that we have made to our ecosystem. These are some of the things that actually gives the pointer to the reason why we have to act fast to restoring our climate, to restoring our ecosystem, right? Restoration, the opposite is degradation. So if you are restoring something, that means whatever it is that we are restoring has degraded. So here I'm putting up some few overviews so that we can see the impact of some of these degrading acts of our ecosystem. And I'm bringing it home a little. So at least it looks very familiar. Coastal flooding causes 50 billion of damage. This was somewhat reported 1997. So that means it didn't just start now. Ecosystem degradation did not just start now. So that means it has accumulated over time. In 1993, in Nigeria, 75% of total agricultural area threatened with 1 meter sea level rise. Now it is worse. Between 510 to 675 billion US dollars are required for low carbon development growth in Africa. If Africa will have to restore itself to at least a carbon zero emitting region, right? Continent. This figure might look like it's a give and take thing. Overview of this figure is just saying that Africa is nowhere near meeting that net zero as we speak at the moment. And the 2030 agenda is actually dwindling if we don't act fast, right? Africa received less than 2.5% of financial flow from international carbon market, representing around $22 billion. What this simply means is that the financing that actually comes into restoring the ecosystem within our space called Africa is actually so small that if we are looking at reaching the goal that we have at 2030 or meeting the goal of net zero emission, at the moment, we cannot actually say it is practicable. So that means we have to step up our game. We have to start acting way more beyond the level at which we are acting today, right? Between 75 and 250 million people will suffer increased water stress. This was published in 2007 by IPCC. The case is getting worse. I decided to dig into some of some past years' experiences that we've had with degradation. So we will have an understanding that it is not just about now. And the BBC 2022 was talking about the flooding that happened recently in Australia that killed about 21 people. Thousands of homes were lost and were left uninhabited. I talked about the Brazil flooding as well. That one happened the first quarter of 2023. Like, these are some of the things that definitely are still emanating from what the degradation has caused. Africa will see a 2 to 3 billion US dollar net loss from market impact. This is, I wouldn't want to say a big blow, but of course, this net loss is what we experience as an African continent as we speak, because there are quite a number of improvements, there are quite a number of advancements that probably could have just come way beyond the way it is. But when we look at Africa and we look at the rest of the continent, it's obvious that we are not at par with several other continents. And this is some of the reasons why we need to step up to be able to at least start acting, to be able to get ourselves together and move forward, right? Between 4 to 6 billion US dollar losses in forest ecosystem services by 2016. This is another projection that was made by Mendelssohn, right? And another 10 to 15% of sub-Saharan species will be at risk of extinction. Another projection by IPCC. Now, some of these projections, in fact, I would say some of these projections are beginning to happen, and that is why the UN and every other international organizations and several other bodies are beginning to clamor for ecosystem restoration, clamor for climate change mitigation, adaptation, and also restoration, right? And the projections that were made back in the days were projections, but in today, we're in 2023, right? And what we can experience is that majority of those projections are beginning to emanate, and it is even going beyond the bounds of the projections. And that is why there are a whole lot of cry about we need to salvage our ecosystem, because if we don't, no one else will. And we have to do it because we live in it. And we don't want the ecosystem to fall apart during our own time. And here I'm also going to be talking from the perspective of GROOM. There's a publication from GROOM, and it recognizes ecosystem restoration in some subcategories. So I'll be giving us an overview of the subcategories of the ecosystem restoration. Rehabilitation is one, and this is talking about improving a site from its degraded site. Enhancement or augmentation is another, which talks about improving the ecosystem functions in a site from its degraded state. The first one is talking about improving the site from its degraded state. The next one is talking about the parameters in which you can actually adopt to be able to get the site out of its degraded state. Then we talk of reclamation. This is often associated with mines and waste dumps, in which the initial goal is detoxified, right? And the terrain is being reestablished and stabilized. Another is replacement. If it is bad, you replace it, right? But then the replacement will have to be done in a 3R form. You have to reduce, you must be able to reuse, and of course, you must be able to recycle. So when you are replacing, that doesn't mean you should throw it out in the open. Plastic, for an example. There are ways in which you can actually make sure that you are still using what you are replacing for another purpose, right? And that is very important for us. So under these subcategories, we could see rehabilitation, we could see augmentation, we could see reclamation, and see replacements. These are some, at least, outline strategies that can be used for ecosystem restoration. And before us as well, as we go along, it's a masterclass. I'm expected to probably just run through the entire lecture, I believe. Emmanuel?
Yes, absolutely, sir. And after which we are going to attend to questions and answer. That will be by 9:45 or thereabout. Okay,
thank you. All right, so
if you have any question you want to ask at this point, you can ask as well, and I believe they want to engage.
Okay, all right, thank you. So here I'm putting forward to us a trajectory of a restoration project. And the graph is on the x-axis, ecosystem structure, on the y-axis, you have ecosystem processes. So now biomass and nutrient cycling is on the one side, the species and complexities on the other side. So it simply means that these are parameters in which by the time you tweak, you can actually have a form of restoration. If you reverse the situation, you might have degradation. And that's what we want to look at here. You can see ahead, you see the original ecosystem in blue dots, and in white circle, you see the degraded ecosystem. The degraded ecosystem means that you probably might at some point get boxed into a corner where you probably will explode, right? It's just like tending towards zero. And at the end of the day, when you reach zero, you definitely go into minus. You're going to -1, -2, -3. So at that point, it simply means that you have already exploded. You no longer exist, because in humanity, you wouldn't probably have negative of it. So by the time it is reduced to zero, it becomes nothing. And that's exactly why the clamor is so high. And that is the reason for actions. So talking about action, no action, no action. If there are no actions, you continue to get boxed into a corner. And at the end of the day, you find yourself on zero level. And of course, even at zero level, that's already extinction. And that's exactly what we don't want to happen. But then there is hope. And the hope is that you can actually enhance some of the actions that we're putting forward. Restoration actions. I listed some subcategories. This list of categories that I initially listed are things that we probably can do to be able to enhance our ecosystem so it gets better by day. And the more it gets better, the more you see that it projects towards the original ecosystem that we have or that we used to have. And one of those subcategories that I mentioned initially was rehabilitation. And by the time you keep doing this, you discover that we get closer or we move more far closer to our original state in which everybody is good, we breathe in fresh air, quality air, the water is good, our environment is good and clean, everything looks normal, biodiversity is complete, you know, there is no extinction of any of the species out there, whether wild or maybe not the ones that are not wild. No? All of these things put together are things that actually would restore us back to our original ecosystem. Restoration in itself is another way to be able to go around it. And the replacement that I talked about the other time, but then when you're talking about replacement, always remember to put the 3 R's in mind because it's very key. By the time several of these subcategories are being actionalized, right? We'll discover that ecosystem restoration in itself will begin to happen. And that is just a typical scenario of explaining how we can put forward some of our ecosystem. So now, when we're looking at the enhancement, when we're looking at rehabilitation, we're looking at restoration, looking at replacement, some of this action, in fact, quite a number of them now aligns with the climate actions in which we are putting forward out there. The tiniest little one could just be plant a tree, right? Planting a tree is an action you are putting forward. But then I can put forward an action, another can put forward an action. But if I am reluctant to put forward an action and another is reluctant to put forward an action, then at the end of the day, we'll discover that we have no action. And if there are no actions, the degrading ecosystem begins to tend towards zero. And that's exactly the reason why your action and my action seriously matters. It matters a lot because the action you put for a singular person cannot restore the ecosystem. So it takes all of us to put forward our concerted effort to be able to achieve the restoration that we hope to achieve at the end of the day. Additional subcategories, because it gave some few other additionals, and here we'll be talking about some of them. Remediation is another one. This is very to reclamation. Hello, I hope I'm back. Apologies for the break. Am I back?
Yes, you are back, sir. We are
okay. Thank you. Thank you. Remediation, which is similar to reclamation, right? Talks about the removing chemical contaminants from polluted areas. A typical example, like I have here, is bioremediation, phytoremediation, and several other physical means that we can actually use to be able to achieve some of these things, especially actions that we can do in this regard that can protect human and ecosystem health. We have recreation. This is also similar to replacement, right? What recreation will do is to construct a new biological community on a site in which anthropogenic disturbance essentially remove the entire native community, often an attempt to match a particular historical condition. So this is more like you are completely recreating a new community. You are completely recreating a new atmosphere. You are completely recreating a new, it could even be compound. It could be a plot of land. It could be anything, right? Like this is just way similar to replacement. But what we're trying to do here is we're trying to construct a new biological community. Because I wouldn't want to run through quite a, because I still have, I'm looking at my time, because I still have some few slides. I would just like at this point to go to what yourself and myself can actually do as an individual to be able to get our ecosystem restored, because I wanted that to be one of the major focal points of this course. As we've talked about what we can do as an organization, as a government, in a bigger way, for you and me, in our own little way, there are also things that we can do. And I will quickly want to talk about it, how I can make a difference and how you can make a difference. My slide is gone, I guess.
Yes, we don't have the slides again, sir. Okay.
So I think we have it back. So how can I make a difference? Because there are a lot of talks. There has been a lot of talks. There have been a lot of lectures. There have been a lot of different people talking about different things, talking about mitigation, talking about adaptation, talking about restoration. But the most important thing is not just to talk. The most important thing is to act. And particularly the decade in which we are is a decade of action. So I like to tend my conversation around ecosystem restoration, mitigation, climate action, or what have you, to what exactly you can do as an individual in your respective homes, in your respective offices, wherever it is you find yourself as an individual, because it's very important. We have seen, I've run us through some few key things that are happening due to the degradation. You really don't want this to persist. You don't want flooding to continue. We don't want drought to continue. We don't want several of these natural disasters to keep continuing and killing and destroying our homes and just putting a whole lot of chaos out there in the world, right? We don't want this to continue. And if you don't want it to continue, if I don't want it to continue, just like we see in the statistics, if you don't do anything and I don't do anything, we wouldn't see a change. And that's why it's important that we put forward action. I put forward my action, you put forward your action. Our little action here and there will eventually count to be able to achieve whatever it is that we want to achieve, and which is the ecosystem restoration, right? Now, one of the things you can do as an individual is to grow your food, grow your own food. That's possible. It could be in your backyard. It could be at your gallery. You might have a garden at the back of your, at the back of your building, at the back of your house. Just grow your own food. You might not be able to grow everything, but the little you can actually will make a difference. You are not just growing your food to eat it all alone. You are growing your food at the same time, also planting something that can actually give back fresh air into the atmosphere, right? Because whatever it is we breathe out, the plants that we plant is the one they take in. And whatever it is they emit is the one we breathe in, right? So if that is the case, then growing your own food within your own vicinity is actually one of a beautiful way to go. So if you do this, you are actually putting forward an action and you are already on a journey to ecosystem restoration. Growing your own food is healthier, great for kids, reduces stress, helps the environment, and saves your money. So you grow your own food, you see the numerous benefits that you probably will have. You have a more healthy health, more healthy life, right? And even, in fact, kids can actually use it as a form of a remembrance of their childhood. They go to the garden, they do a lot of planting. You know, this is also, it's also somewhat fun in its own self. So, and it also reduces stress. It helps the environment and it saves you some money. Is that not a win-win? For me, I believe it's a win-win. Another thing you can do is to use renewable shopping bags. Renewable shopping bags are available out there. And an example is this that I'm showing us in the picture here. This is a reusable. You see the one I decided to cancel. I put an X to. The X means that this is not good. Then the correct mark means, yes, this is appropriate. Use renewable shopping bag. Anytime you're going to the shopping mall, try as much as possible to use a renewable shopping bag. The amount of petroleum used to manufacture this bag could drive a car around the world 1,076 times. Is that not incredible? If I would like to use the word incredible. It's amazing how this can actually turn a whole lot of things around. Actually, this can make a whole lot of difference. So if you don't use this type of polythene bags that actually degrades the environment, and you decide, instead of using this, you decide to go for renewable shopping bags, you're actually adding your own quota of action to ecosystem restoration in itself. So 50 million plastic bag litters the environment every single year, and would take about 100 of years to degrade. So we see, in a way, you are polluting the environment, you are degrading the ecosystem. The more we use some of these plastic bags, the more we use some of these polythene bags, the more we degrade the environment. So why not just start practicing this act of using the renewable shopping bags, and you will be actually adding your own quota of action to ecosystem restoration. Another simple thing because it's there. Instead of wasting away, at the end of the day, when you need to water your plants, when you need to do some few other things, you have to go turn on the pumping machine that actually uses a particular energy source to be able to power it, right? If you are still using solar, you might, in a way, be reducing the level of your emission footprint. But just imagine you turning on your generator to power a pumping machine to be able to pump, for you to be able to utilize some water. Well, you can actually collect rainwater. So if you do this, you're actually adding value and you're actually putting forward action to ecosystem restoration. Don't throw them away. If you have items that you no longer use or need, give them to someone else who might need them. This is actually, look, in itself, looks like it really doesn't matter, does it? I can just throw it away, or probably I can just give it to somebody else. But in actuality, you have to be intentional. Remember the definition we gave the other time about ecosystem restoration. You have to be intentional about what you want to do. It is not something that will have to do itself by itself. So in itself, it's an action that will have to happen, but you have to make it happen. You have to make the action happen. So instead of throwing away stuff that you really don't need anymore, just give it to somebody else. The person continue to use it. By so doing, you're also respecting the 3 R's. You either reduce, or recycle. At this point, you're reusing, even though you're not using it particularly, but you're giving it to somebody else for the person to be able to reuse. You would keep cash in your pocket and protect the environment, which is actually very good. Take your vehicle for repair and maintenance regularly. Do not get to the point where your exhaust begins to show that blackish smoke or whitish smoke before you eventually go for maintenance. Do it on a regular basis, because if you do it on a regular basis, the level of emission for that vehicle will actually be reduced drastically. So that in itself is actually an action that you can put forward. And if you put this action forward, you're adding your quota to the big umbrella of ecosystem restoration. This will reduce emission a lot, right? Turn off bulbs when not being used. If you don't need it, then don't turn it on. If you're not there, then don't turn it on. Don't leave it on when you're leaving the house. Make sure that you, in fact, you're not just saving energy. You are at the same time cutting your energy cost, because energy cost is actually is getting worse by day. The amount of money charged per kilowatt of electricity that you use now is way more than the way it used to be back in the days, right? And now, maybe with the advent of the smart meters, a lot of people are beginning to wisen up, because if they leave it on and they come back, they see that their meter balance has dropped. So a lot of people are beginning to wise up, but at the same time, like it has to be an intentional thing. We have to make it an habit, because some people will still feel, I have the money to do it. I have money to leave it on. So just leave it on, let it waste. You know, that's actually not a good habit. So these are some of the things we can do as an individual to be able to salvage our degrading ecosystem. Purchase recycled toilet paper because they do not involve cutting down trees for production. So if you use recycled toilet papers, you will be saving a lot from the machineries that are used in cutting down trees and felling of several trees that happens in our ecosystem. That way you will be discouraging deforestation as well, right? Send electronic wedding invitation. It looks really pretty small. Wedding invitation, birthday cards, birthday invitation, Valentine cards, send it electronically. The technology that we use today has come to stay. So, and if technology that we use today has come to stay, there is really no need for us to print when we don't need it. If you don't require, if it is not a very compulsory, or let me use the word, if life does not depend on it, you really don't have to print it. You can go paperless. Try as much as possible to go paperless. This will save paper and to eventually save deforestation that happens by cutting down trees. Use your phone or computer for note taking instead of writing and writing. Booklet is done, go get another booklet, write and write. You can make use of the memories that you have in your mobile phone and your computers. Take the notes, and from there, you are good to go. And it's even handy for you because you go around with it. So anytime you need the notes, you can easily check it up. So these are some of the little actions that we can do, but then it actually matters and eventually will add its own quota to the bigger umbrella of the ecosystem restoration. Save gift bags and boxes for future use. So if you're given bags, package it properly, keep it somewhere safe, so that when you need bags in the near future, you just go right in there and pick it up and use. Just cultivate the habit of reusing. It's actually very good. And because you will be saving yourself the cost of buying another one when you need it, right? At the same time, you are also reusing, which means that you are also salvaging our degrading ecosystem because you have limited your carbon footprint in that simple way. It's just that simple. Use cloth rags instead of tissue papers. Clothes are reusable, tissues are not, right? Dispose waste properly. Learn how to sort your waste. Do not put biodegradable waste with plastic waste. Learn how to sort waste properly so that the plastic waste that you're actually trashing will be able to be reused by others. But when you put everything, will I use the word concatenate everything together, right? When you put everything, model it up together, it will be difficult to sort. Dispose it properly so that those that would, the end users that would eventually require to use or that will need to use it, will be able to use it effectively without hampering whatever it is that you might have cost by not sorting your waste. So try as much as possible to do that. It is very important and good. Take a shower instead of a long bath. So people will stay an hour in the, I'm not saying it's not a good thing, but try to limit the wastage of water that you actually utilize. I think that's just a simple analogy. You'll be saving water that way, and which is very good. Acquire basic sewing skill. Patch holes and sew buttons back on. It's so simple, but it actually means a lot to the ecosystem. So practice some of these things and you will be happy for it. So while I round up, I have a pictorial view right in front of us, and it's just a tree. I like to use this to round up majority of my conversation. It's a tree, just one. Just imagine the number of trees that can be cut down. And imagine the level of deforestation that happens just by utilizing more paper and wasting, what's it called, wood, wasting tissue papers, and several of these footprints that actually come from trees. Some of these items that are manufactured from trees. Here we have just one singular tree, and the number of individuals that this tree shelters, if I'm going to count, are over 300. And just imagine this beautiful scene. Look at this scenario. Very beautiful. And that shows you the value of one single tree, right? The same way, one single tree can shelter so many people, so can your one single deed transform many lives. Be intentional with your deeds today to positively impact life. Thank you for listening.
Wow, thank you. Wow. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you for this insightful learning which you've shared with us. Thank you for the great experience. This is indeed engaging, and I believe our participants are really, really motivated and also in getting great insight. Right about now, we have some questions that participants have already dropped on the comment section, and I would also like to read some of those questions so that you can attend to them, sir. We have a question from Buluatife Christiana. She asks that, okay, I think it's a comment. My little take on your question is that cutting down tree itself is not bad, but when cutting down trees, we should also replace these trees by planting more. That's afforestation. So we have a question from Chena from Anambra State. He asks that, what if you use your phone for note taking and the phone gets lost? How can you recover your write-up? So that is a very good question, though, but I believe. And there's another question from Usman. My question is, what is the government doing to discourage charcoal at home? You see some big restaurants using charcoal, even bakery. I would just appreciate you attend to these two questions briefly, sir.
Okay, thank you very much for those insightful questions. I'll start with the first one. What if your phone gets lost, right? Of course, that happens a lot of times. But then there are battalions of ways you can secure your data, not necessarily being particularly, how will I say, engraved on your phone and your phone alone. So that it's even when your phone gets lost, you still have your data backed up somewhere else, right? There are battalions of ways you can achieve that. Google Drive is there, Dropbox is there, quite a number of drives that you have on the internet that you can actually synchronize your mobile with. And your mobile phone, for an example, also even have its own backup end that you can always, at interval, back up your information, be it your WhatsApp chats, be it your notes, be it your, in fact, up to your Google Photos can easily be backed up. All you just need to do is go to the settings, turn it on, and you are secured. Because even if that phone, if you decide not to use that phone anymore, you can always retrieve your data from the backup that you already have. You know, these are some of the ways you can actually achieve this. So technology has gone beyond worrying about whether our phone can get lost and our data get missing out there, right? And these are just some few simple ways in which you can achieve that. I hope I'll be able to answer that. And that's pretty straightforward. Then the other one that talks about the government and charcoal, right? The government and charcoal. So charcoal in itself is one. What about bush burning? What about even using firewood? Some restaurants as well, even as we speak, still use firewood. I would like to talk from different perspectives. First is the, what's it called? Enlightenment. There is a word, but that word skipped my mind right now. It's called enlightenment, but at the same time, it's called sensitization. Yes, that's the word. You need to sensitize some individuals. When you use charcoal, it's actually not good. And there are better alternatives. But A lot of people do not even know there are better alternatives for charcoal, for an example. Some know that there are better alternatives, but they cannot afford it. That is another conversation. Some do not know that there are newer technologies now where you can actually use the waste for restaurants that you mentioned. I think you made mention of restaurants, for an example. Waste from restaurants actually can be used as fuel to be able to cook another food that they need to cook. But they really don't know that those kind of stoves actually exist now. A kind of stove that will degrade your waste and turn it to energy for you to be able to use to cook another food, right? Well, some do not even know those kind of things exist. So I will say, one, sensitization is very key. The government might be relaxed about some certain things, but with the new act that is coming up, with the Climate Change Act that is coming up, though we of course, myself and you know about several policies that are out there, and a lot of them even enacted to law are not being practiced. But of course, the first line of action is for us to drive a policy to that effect. And the Climate Change Act is already addressing some of these things, giving incentive to those that are actually going with alternatives, right? It's a good one. It's a good way to go. But beyond just drafting a policy and putting those policies out there, enacting it to law, is making sure that these policies are strictly followed and a lot of people actually use it. And for you to be able to do that, that means you must first give an enabling environment for several of these individuals to be able to do it. So for government, if I would like to talk from the point of view of the government, I would plead that there is need for an enabling environment to actually be given to. And enabling environment is just quite easy. When you're talking about unemployment rates, we can just oppose the figures. Of course, it's on the high side.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
So
yes, sir.
If an avenue is given to the young individuals that we have out here, several have come up with diversified solutions, technological solutions that can actually even way better our life than using charcoal or using firewood, because these things are detrimental to our health as an individual. It's detrimental to the ecosystem in general. So now there are several technologies out there. This particular stove I'm talking about now that can actually turn biodegradable waste into fuel. Energy for that energy will power the stove and you're good to go. Now, if an enabling environment is given and government encourages this kind of entrepreneurs to actually grow within the space or the confined space called Nigeria, we probably would have one, not just have numerous of these stoves available for people to be able to purchase and begin to use. We will also have competition within this space so that the cost of these stoves actually comes so low to the point where even a simple trader can afford it, right? These are some of the key things that probably need to be done, but it's a step at a time. So this is just one out of numerous things that can actually go out there, that can be done. I hope I'm not already exhausting my time.
Though we have some questions, and that have been outlined, and we also appreciate we manage the time to attend to those questions.
Okay. So that's fantastic. So all in all, sensitization is very important for those that are still using. Some might even be able to afford it, but they probably do not even know. So that means there is need for propagation of the gospel of newer technologies that are addressing this type of issues, and for them to be able to actually get it across to those that require it. From the side of the government, because for us to be able to use these things, it is from our own hand. But for the side of the government, I would just say an enabling environment that can encourage the usage and the production of some of these technological devices. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor, for these insights which you shared with us. There are other questions which I will quickly ask. We have 3 questions I will appreciate you attend to, sir, and I will try and be brief with them. The first question is from Ujoku Steven from Anambra. He asked that what are shortcomings in the use of modern media to promote and propagate sustainability and its importance? I think the principal actors have not exploited the media the most. And there's another question from Uluwato Biomotayo. Can you please shed more light on water wastage? From my little knowledge of hydrological cycle, water doesn't disappear and always comes back to first point of use. And we also have a question from Francis from Enugu. My question is, according to the graph showing the trajectories of ecosystem restoration, what's the current world ecosystem position on the graph?
Okay, let me start with the first question that talks about, I think the first one is, what do you mean by purchase recycled toilet papers?
The first question was on shortcomings in the use.
Okay, shortcomings. What are shortcomings in the use? Oh, okay. Shortcomings in the use of modern media. The first question I will talk about is, if we focus too much on promoting it on media, what it will do for us is it's going to enlighten a lot of people. It's going to give information to a lot of people. But if we just concentrate basically on that, then we will not be putting forward any action. So as much as we are promoting it on social media, as much as we are promoting it everywhere we go, we are also expected to put forward actions for majority of our dreams to actually be actualized, right? For majority of those footprints that we want to actualize to be done, we need to put forward actions. So promoting on social media is key because it is also a way to broaden the understanding of quite a number of people on these subject areas, which is fantastic. But the shortcoming is if you completely focus on it and do not put forward action, then promoting it may actually mean nothing. But if I'm looking at it from another perspective, I really don't see any shortcoming in it because you are giving knowledge to people on social media. We might not have utilized it enough, but to the level at which you are utilizing it, let us just continue to use it more, because the more you put it out there in social media, on modern media, or what have you, the more people get to know about it. And the more people get to know about it, the more they are driven to put forward actions. So what I would like to say within that space is that as much as we are putting it out there on modern media, right, it's also important that we also keep track of it, that we are also putting forward actions, because it is the action that drives the results that we want for the number of things that we actually promote on the modern media. I hope that clarifies or answers that question. The next one, am I audible?
Yes, you are, sir. You are.
All right. So the next question talks about, okay, says, can you please shed more light on water wastage? Oh, okay. Yes, as you might have actually rightly said, water do not disappear. As much as it is being used, it goes somewhere else and come back from somewhere else. Yes, that scenario actually in itself happens. But how does it come back? That's the question. How does it come back? So the water wastage is centered on how do you get water? Before you can get water, it is either you have to go dig into the well and start drawing. And of course, modernization has happened. So quite a number of people don't do that anymore. So what people do now is dig a borehole. And when you dig a borehole, you cannot go there and start dragging it out by yourself or drawing out the water by yourself. You will probably require a pumping machine to be able to get the water into your house, right? And if that will happen, if you waste it, that means you continue to run on the machineries that will bring the water to you. And these machineries actually have their footprint on the ecosystem as well. So now wasting water in itself, when you have the water with you, it is like you having a sum of money. If you have a sum of money, using the money is not a big deal. But when the money finishes, how do you get the money? I think that's the question, right? So if you have 100 million, if you decide to buy anything you want with it, yeah, it's fine. But the reason for a financial knowledge on money management is because if you have money, you need to utilize it for you to be able to use it effectively, right? And so that money will produce money. But in terms of water, now we're talking in terms of you have the water, but if you waste it, then definitely you will still have to exercise some rigorous steps to be able to get the water back. And this has its footprint on energy. And energy is one major driving factor that actually pollutes the air. Because when you look at the footprint and the whole cycle of getting energy into your homes, you will understand that the lesser you use the energy, the better. So I hope that probably would answer or just give an insight to that question. And the next one talks about, my question is, according to the graph showing the trajectory of ecosystem restoration, what's the current world ecosystem position on the graph? It's just so simple. I would say what we are trying to achieve now is trying to get the world temperature to at least the barest minimum of 1.5 degrees. And this probably will take us 2050 for us to be able to achieve. Like that just gives us a trajectory view of where we are on the map. It simply means that for us to be able to achieve whatever it is we want to achieve, this 2023, right? So that means it's still going to take close to about 30 years. That's if we put forward the action rigorously now for us to be able to achieve that. So that means we're already at the wit end. That's just a simple analogy. So on the map, we'll probably be close to zero. And that's why there is so much shout about it. And that's why there are a whole lot of noise about sustainability, about ecosystem, about climate change, because if we do not act now, we are at the verge of getting ourselves. And that's why you see, I gave a typical scenario of several news that are happening around the world, right? About flooding, about drought, about several other chaos that are happening out there that have been, that major cost about 7,300 plus, as published by World Economic Forum, right? Disaster. This is actually enormous. So if you're looking at the trajectory view of where we are, we're already at the very wit end. And that's why the action we need to put forward is right now. And I hope that probably would answer that question. So I don't want to answer the question I am not asked. Over to you, Emmanuel. Emmanuel.
Okay, hello, sir. Yeah, I'm with you, and we have a question from Akitola Akiyemi, which he just dropped, and I'm also going to be sharing the question with you directly now, sir. So he asks, how can we get a trustable database about the current vegetation cover and deforestation rates in Nigeria from state to state?
Can you come again?
How can we get, can you hear me now?
Yes.
He asks that, how can we get a trustable database about the current vegetation cover and deforestation rates in Nigeria from state to state?
The current cover and deforestation states.
A trustable database.
Okay.
About vegetation cover and deforestation rates in Nigeria. A database that covers the vegetation cover and deforestation rates across the states in Nigeria. That's a question from Akitola Akiyemi.
Okay. About about the statistics, I probably might not even have I probably might not have an idea of where you can get that particular data. But of course, there are special tools for us to use. Let me start with our current issue with data in the country, right? Yes, of course, we all know that we have some serious challenges with having some database readily available. We have some current and correct, right? Current and correct data for some of our footprints in several sectors in the country. Just very recently, I stumbled on an analysis by somebody who was talking about the inflation rate as published by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, NBS, right? And was actually equating it with what is the real data has gotten somewhere else. And they were like, they're not at par. It's like about 2 times different. While the inflation rate is talking about 22 point something percent, the other report was showing around 47% or thereabouts, right? And these are some of the challenges we probably might have. I'm not saying NBS does not have correct data. I'm not in a place to judge that because this particular information actually was not vetted. So I'm not in the right position to say that that particular validation was correct or not. But all in all, we have challenges with some few data. And of course, NBS is a place to probably look out for, but might not be exact as to what exactly you're looking for. And for me, on top of my head right now, I probably do not have any data bank or database right in my head that I probably can refer you to for you to be able to get that data. But you can utilize Google, can utilize Bing and the likes to make some search. Peradventure, you might be able to find some. And if we don't have, then definitely this is actually, of course, we do have some few data in this regard. But if you feel that those data are not adequate enough, then this is actually a beautiful gap that you might also want to be able to step into the issue and say, oh, this is a gap. And let us see how we can. I've not really searched, except if I will have to go through and probably search for that and see maybe there is 1 or 2. But if you also make your own research, right, and you can't find any, then definitely that is a gap. And we can all come together and probably see how we can bridge that gap. And probably that would be my reaction on that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Somi, for these responses which you've given. We have just like 2 more questions we appreciate you help us attend to before we end this session. There is a question from Asha. She asks that, can tree plantations and mitigating indiscriminate deforestation alone mitigate the effects of climate change?
Of course not. That is just a typical. That's just a typical answer. Capital no. And if you look at the number of things that I said you can do as an individual, there are some of them that do not even have to do with deforestation, right? Deforestation is just one way. We even talk about carbon sequestration. That means we have too many carbon, or too much. I think that's the word. Too much carbon in the atmosphere than we require as we speak. So that means the carbon that we have in the atmosphere, we need to find a way to be able to draw some of them and probably send them into the carbon sink. That is maybe a bank in which we keep carbon, or we secure carbon for 1,000 years or thereabouts, right? That's another possibility of one of the actions that you can put forward. Carbon sequestration. There are numerous ways in which deforestation is just 1 out of a million ways for us to be able to at least get our climate and ecosystem restored. So it's definitely not the only one.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. And one more question from, okay, she said, I'm Fortune from Kano State. She's asking about the use of biomass for improved, okay, does the use of biomass for improved cook stoves harms the ecosystem in any way?
Of what? Biomass of?
For improved cook stoves harms. Does the use of biomass for improved cook stoves harms the ecosystem in any way?
Biomass. The answer is relative, right? Or I use the word subjective. The use of cooking stove can have both positive, biomass cooking stove can have both positive and negative environmental impact. That's the reality, depending on the specific context and the type of biomass used. So when you are looking at it from the positive end, you can say biomass in itself is actually a renewable energy source, right? And it can actually provide an alternative to fossil fuel, which we are condemning today for cooking, right? In many parts of the world, especially if you're looking at it from in the rural areas, biomass such as wood charcoal and agricultural waste are primarily source of their fuel for cooking. Like that's primarily their source of cooking. And by using biomass as fuel in those kind of area, they can reduce their dependence on non-renewable fossil fuel and lower their greenhouse gas emission. So you can look at it from that point of view. But however, the use of biomass in itself can also have negative impact on the environment, especially when it involves unsustainable harvesting or unsustainable harvesting practice. I think somebody made a comment of deforestation and afforestation the other time, which is actually a very beautiful one. Example is if people cut down trees for firewood faster than they can grow it back, it can lead to deforestation. So even as much as you are actually still practicing afforestation, but if you cut down more trees than you require or that the time it will require you to grow it back. So you must be able to balance it, because if you don't balance it, at the end of the day, it is still going to actually result to deforestation. But then it's not also going to result to deforestation alone. You will also have the effect of soil erosion, and you probably would have loss of biodiversity, because these are some of the challenges that we have with deforestation. So if you're looking at the point of, yes, if I cut down any tree, I can always plant another tree, then I've not done anything bad. Of course, it has to be properly done, because if it is not properly done and particularly and intentionally done, then you will discover that you are still contributing, even though you even plant 3 more and you cut down 2, but the 2 you have cut down, the time it will take the 3 to grow back to replace the 2 you are cutting down does not really align. You probably will still not be practicing the same the footprint or the action that you think you are putting forward, because at that point you probably would be you'll be practicing deforestation in itself. Additionally, if I want to add, I'll say burning biomass for fuel can release harmful pollutants into the air, right? It definitely can do that, which of course in itself can also have negative health impact for both the people and the environment. So if I want to talk about minimizing it in itself, to minimize the negative impact of biomass use for cooking stove, it is important to promote the sustainable harvesting practice. So you have to keep promoting it. You have to sensitize a lot of people for them to be able to at least practice this and to use efficient and clean burning stove technology. So they shouldn't just go and be using anyhow kind of technology. Maybe that will also still hamper the environment more. Yeah, I think that would probably be my reaction.
Thank you very much, Dr. Somi, for this insightful response. And I really appreciate each and every questions you've attended to, and most importantly, the knowledge you've shared with us on the masterclass session on environment and ecosystem restoration. Thank you very much. And we believe that we all are going to be
an agent of change. We need to protect the environment. We need to keep and restore the ecosystem, which is very, very important, and which the phase 2 of this project is more about. And on behalf of the leadership of SDSN Nigeria, we sincerely want to appreciate you, sir, for this insightful session which you've led today. And we thank you for the lasting relationship we've been having over the years. And definitely, there are some opportunities which Ambassador Somi has also made open to the champions who are going to be the selected and successful applicant of this program at the end. And I know that at the end of it all, it's going to be a productive engagement for each and everyone. Once again, we want to thank you, sir, for this great session we had with you today, and we hope to connect with you. But before you leave, sir, I would also like to ask on behalf of the actors, because they would like to further engage with you and connect with you, which of this platform will you prefer they reach out to you from? Maybe is it via email or LinkedIn, or will you give an access to your mobile number or WhatsApp number?
I think LinkedIn is just appropriate.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. And we are going to share your LinkedIn profile link with them so that they can get to connect with you. All right. Thank you very much once again for the wonderful session we've had with you today. We look forward to seeing you again over and over again, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Dear participants, I believe it's been a wonderful session this morning. And right about now, we'll be moving straight to the second module for today. And like I mentioned, we have a lot of industry experts and leaders that are going to be facilitating today's session. And the second module is on pollution and waste management. We are blessed to have Mrs. Yetunde Fadeyi, who is an energy and sustainability practitioner with over a decade experience, exploring the nexus between renewable energy, food security, health programs, and other developmental space. She currently works with the Oyo State government through a PPP as the Chief Sustainability Officer, restructuring the waste management system for your state from cradle to cradle. Our ultimate goal is to leverage our competencies across policy research and practice entrepreneurship domains to democratize energy access and sustainability, ultimately to enabling smooth energy transition for sustainability for millions of people. And I'm glad to say that Mrs. Yetunde Fadeyi has been a blessing to millions of youths home and abroad. This morning, we are glad to have you on this call, ma. It's a pleasure to welcome you to facilitate today's session. Thank you, ma. Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Hello, ma. Good morning.
Hello.
Okay, good morning. We can hear you now.
Okay, awesome. Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to get the chance, the opportunity basically to talk about one of the things that I'm passionate about, which is typically pollution and waste management. And I just want to appreciate SDSN Nigeria for, coming up with this amazing initiative, which is the Climate Actors Accelerators Programme. And it is really needed because Nigeria, even globally, the ages 18 to 35 make up the largest proportion of youths. Youths actually make up the largest proportion, rather, of the population. And what better time to educate and equip the youths with the necessary information that can essentially pioneer transformative solutions to not just protect our planet, but to ensure sustainability, which is typically providing or ensuring that there is resources for the next generation and the generation that comes after that, right? And the accelerator program is so intense and comprehensive as that, trying to not just teach the theory, right, but also ensure practical sessions. And I think that blend in itself is really commendable, because it enables people to not just talk about, climate action or how they want to transform their communities, but actually do it. And it is so essential that we are able to carry that that perspective into a program as this. So without further ado, today I'll be facilitating a masterclass session with the theme pollution and waste management. And while I was trying to, look through and see how I could come up with, the slides, right? For some reason, I did not complete it. And the reason why I did not complete it is because I saw an avenue to not just make it a conversation, but also to actually share case studies based on the work that we do at Mutaina Recycling, which is the Oyo State Waste Management Consultant for Oyo State, right? As mentioned, it's a public-private partnership. So typically we function as the Oyo State Waste Management Company. We oversee waste management from cradle to cradle. Another reason why I could not essentially complete it is because with all the work that we do, right, it is so overwhelming and so, like yesterday I was even stuck in traffic, right? So but that shouldn't stop us from having to benefit or to basically share what we do. So today I will do something very unconventional. I will share a synthesis note by the World Bank on waste management, and I'll also try and see if I can display my screen, of course. Share what you already know, perhaps during the course of this program, the SDGs, but we're doing something unconventional in the sense that we'll try to connect the SDGs, right, to pollution and waste management, and see how should proper or certain approaches be implemented within pollution and waste management, how we can translate, to deliver the SDGs, right? And at the back of that, we would essentially talk about how pollution and waste management connects to SDG 13, which is climate action. I have this saying that is so ingrained in everything that I do, and it is, there cannot be a society or a business if there is no environment. Now think about the environment being our habitat, right? Of course it's our habitat. The earth is our habitat, except you have millions of dollars that you are planning to elope with Elon Musk to Mars, but still 7 billion people live on Earth, right? If the Earth is not suitable, just like so many other planets out there are not. If it's not suitable, then it cannot accommodate life. If there is no life, there is no need for business. There is no need for, societal transformation and all of that. So the singular most important resource that we should protect is Mother Earth, right? And this is why for everything that happens on Earth, be it environmental, be it what's it called, like basically what happened in is it Ukraine? No, basically what happened in Turkey, right? Earthquakes, natural occurrences. Should it happen in the event of us carrying our day-to-day activities, we realize that different things, different opportunities, different, essentially the entire day, our daily lives would be wrecked. That is how grave and important protecting our environment is. Let me dial it down a bit. I've lived in Lagos all my life. And one of the most ravaging environmental issues that we face is flash flooding. I was a victim of flash flooding for a very long time, all through my childhood. And it wasn't just because of climate change, right? It wasn't because the climate was changing, irregular rain patterns and all of that. It was also a function of the behavior of the people that were living around us. And I see it as a major occurrence in Ibadan too as well, where when it starts to rain, that is when people bring out their waste to empty into drainages, waterways, and all of that. It was the same about 20 years ago, right? And this cost people their livelihood, it costs them their properties that they've worked for, even costs, lives. And oftentimes than not, women and children are at the forefront of these disasters, right? And this is why it is important for us to not just take the environment as seriously or as the foundation of ecological diplomacy, but also ensure that women and children are included. Basically, there's inclusivity in our approach. So I will go ahead and share my screen. I want us to talk through the SDGs before we dive into the synthesis note. And maybe we should make this more interactive. If you have any questions, you can drop it and I will, as we progress, I would essentially do my best to answer. So, could you give me the controls so that I can share my screen?
You have access to that. You can share your screen.
Okay, awesome. Okay, can you see my screen? Can anyone see my screen?
Yes, it's up. You have it up.
Okay, so right now I'm on the page of the United Nations, basically Department of Economic and Social Affairs. The reason why I chose this site is because the topic that we are going to be addressing today in as much as the foundation is ecological diplomacy, which essentially means protecting the environment first, it also has impact on the environment, the economies, right? And be it local or global economies. And also, it also has impact on social. And there is also an holistic approach to it, right? So think about the SDGs as a tool that you can use to fulfill social goals, financial goals, basically economic goals, and also environmental goals. Now, because pollution is really prevalent, you have different types of pollution from air, water, basically different types of pollution. But what I would really want us to address today, right, is pollution from a waste perspective and how pollution essentially contributes to climate change, right? So let's start with the SDGs. When you talk about pollution, SDG 1, right? The first SDG, the goal 1, which is no poverty. Pollution is typically synonymous to areas that are poor. You cannot go to a luxurious place, say, for example, Dubai, and find waste lying around. You would typically find waste in areas that are poor. So if there is an appropriate waste management, right, that means that we score marks on SDG 1, which is to end poverty. So if people are lifted out of poverty, right, they are able to take better care of their environment, right? They are able to improve the aesthetics of the environment to suit their new narrative. And this is why having to solve or implement solutions that provide circularity within waste management is very important, because it helps people get out of poverty. That's one point. Number 2, if people are lifted out of extreme poverty, right, hunger will not be an issue, because what they are able to provide for themselves, they're able to provide sustenance, they're able to, ensure that there is food for their family, for their households, and we essentially fulfill most of the targets for, goal 2. Now, when waste is not when waste doesn't define the aesthetics or is a contributing factor to people's lifestyle, it helps us fulfill goal 3, because by the time waste is the center or the source or the go-to in communities, which is typically the norm, right? In marginalized communities, in low-income communities, where waste is typically community-led, you realize that it actually affects their health. So if we can eradicate waste or put proper waste management systems, we realize that we are fulfilling goal 3, right? So this topic or this theme that we are on is so important, because it essentially links all the SDGs and helps to cement the entirety of what we are doing here, or what we essentially want people to be able to carry on and implement. So using the SDGs, right, as a framework, as a tool to fulfill the delivery of this this bottom line that we are discussing is highly critical, because it's not just an easy way to place indicators, but it's also an avenue to holistically deliver value and essentially make impact. So I just talked about how waste management, proper waste management, or the impact proper waste management can have on poverty, can have on food security, and how it can, help people live better lives. So even with gender equality, right? I mentioned earlier how women and children are more impacted by climate change. It is also synonymous with waste management. If you look at the narrative, or basically the reality of the conventional waste management that we practice, you see that women who are primary managers in the homes typically bring out the waste to empty into trucks, or they send their children to do that without adequate without adequate protective equipment, or some sort of protection. They are exposed, right? And the studies that have shown how this actually impacts not just women's lifespan, but even the child mortality rate, because children are equipped. They are not equipped to do this, but they are burdened with the responsibility to sort or to dispose waste in very informal settings, as community led settings, as we have in Nigeria. So it is very important that there's an inclusive framework within waste management, and should this be implemented, it can essentially help us deliver gender equality and also help us protect our children. Now, leveraging waste management, education is very important. Education is crucial, and which is one of the things that we are doing today, right? Broadening our insights to enable us, use the education or use the knowledge transfer to equip ourselves to fight these global challenges that is quite that puts our environment at risk, at a detriment. So education is really important. When we implement education, or let me say climate education, to solve issues as this, people are able to take that insight to build innovation, to provide transformations that are localized, that are relevant to their communities and people-centered, right? And on that note, we deliver quality education, which is SDG 4. Now, on to SDG 6, right? Clean water and sanitation. You know how when waste is not properly managed, right, there's a probability that wastewater is also not properly managed. So it is solid waste and wastewater in this sense. If solid waste is not properly managed in an area or in a community or whatnot, there's a high possibility that it's the same wastewater. Now, when this leaches into underground water, right, it contaminates the table, the water table, and this is another issue brewing. Like we're trying to solve one issue and another is popping up. So it's just like placing a dominoes, and then you just trigger it and the card just keeps falling. So we having to solve waste management issues and solve it in a way that fulfills these SDGs that we've talked about, also helps us to fulfill a very critical SDG, which is clean water and sanitation, right? When there was a project that I worked on in Lagos, where there were, I think, we qualified about 6 island communities, but we essentially implemented for one. They did not have access to clean water, no sanitation, no electricity, and their waste management was in fact non-existent. So basically what we did was, because the majority of the people in the community are food entrepreneurs and essentially women, we built a sanitation facility for them. But instead of disposing the sewage into the ocean, we converted it into biogas, and then the women can use it to cook as opposed to using firewood. So imagine that ripple effect, and merge it with the dominoes card effect that I talked about. So this is what proper waste management can do, what it can deliver, right? Then onto the water treatment part. Areas like this, right, they face, because it's in the middle of the ocean, it's an island middle of the ocean, you have so many oil companies back and forth, and they pollute the water bodies. And because the water body is polluted, there's so much iron content that the water is undrinkable. So that's another aspect of pollution, right? And ultimately, if they cannot drink the water, if they cannot use the water, then there becomes a deficit in that community's infrastructure. So if a community that does not have clean water will necessarily not have adequate waste management infrastructure. So you find out that all of this critical infrastructure are linked, right? A community that does not have access to electricity, access to clean water, access to clean cooking, all of this even makes the community more climate vulnerable. So it is not a function of, oh, this is a luxury, a nice to have. It is a critical infrastructure. In fact, it is a human right. Access to proper waste management is a human right, because if there is a deficit in that area, it affects so many things that are critical to people's livelihood, people's lifestyle, and even makes them more climate vulnerable. So it is important that proper waste management and pollution is marked or ticked as a priority delivery within global conversations and even local conversations. And we as youths can develop adequate innovations to help us tackle this issue. I will talk about the case study in a bit, but I want us to essentially go through the SDGs so you start to think of how you can essentially innovate, what you can do, or what the implications of not having access to proper waste management can do, and what you can do to help it, right? So let's go to affordable and clean energy. Remember I talked about the project that I worked on where we converted sewage, which is another type of waste, right, to power, typically for clean cooking. There are a couple of projects in the pipeline that Mutaina Recycling is also working on, which is converting organic waste into electricity to power street lights. So typically within the market, low-income communities and all of that. And most of what we've talked about today, if you really pay attention, you realize that humans have a lot of responsibility in it. Like humans, we are major stakeholders. We are not just beneficiaries within this system. We're a major stakeholder within this engagement, because for it to be people-centered, for it to actually deliver the SDGs that we have worked on, consolidating, right? Behave the attitudinal perspective of people needs to change to accommodate it. So for us to be able to generate waste, power from waste, that means someone has to essentially do the sorting. And it's just appropriate for, people to want to do it. And then again, the SDGs is typically based on behavior, the behavior of people, right? The acceptance of people, community acceptance, public perception, to deliver this. And waste management is no different. So we having to fulfill SDG 7, right, needs a behavioral change from people. So sorting organic or wet and dry waste, wet from dry waste rather, we're able to, properly account for the organic waste and turn it into biogas so that you can use it to, cook or, power different appliances. And it's so, the approach that Mutaina Recycling is using is so important because in Ibadan, right, most of the street lights are powered by diesel. I don't know if anybody has observed, but we having to retrofit these diesel operating devices, right, into gas that uses not just gas, but biogas is beneficial to the environment, fulfills the SDGs, right? And also, has a social perspective to it. People can see that, this works and they can essentially accept it. Because when we talk about the technology needed to power or to deliver proper waste management, right, it is important that people don't just see it as a sort of technology problem, right, but also see an avenue to include their views, their perspective, even their culture too. I worked on a research, I think it's in Botswana. So we did a couple of African countries, I think 17 African countries, and we're looking to see how we could essentially turn, like a resource assessment, seeing how we could essentially turn waste generated within communities, typically agrarian, that's farming communities, into ammonia. So ammonia is another energy resource that can be used to generate electricity and generate lots of water. The water is inclusive of fertilizer. So in turn, the communities can use the waste that has been processed into ammonia and that has generated water to fertilize their crops, right? So in doing so, we realized that I think Botswana and one other country, they had this culture where they must not touch their human waste. And we needed human waste to be able to increase the output, right? So basically, in so doing, what we did was we had a stakeholder engagement with these people and try to educate them that, okay, fine, you do not have proper waste management infrastructure within your communities, but this is a way we can help you achieve it, right? And the traditionalists, everybody was on board when we're having the stakeholders engagement, and we first wanted to break that bias. So the question we asked them was that, so where did this view originate from? And after so many talk back and forth, they realized that it was a culture that needed to go for them to be able to accept what we wanted to do. So, like I said earlier, people are the major stakeholder. It's not what we have, the problems we have with pollution and waste management, right? It's not a technology problem. People generate waste. People ensure pollution and all of that. But if you take people and place them in a different scenario, or you educate them, or you sensitize them to deliver what the desired outcome, then that's when we can get a real change. then technology and all of that becomes secondary, because the people have already made changes from within, right, to ensure that the technology that you are implementing takes its due place, rather. So on to goal 8, when you do all these things and it impacts on the first 7 SDGs, of course there'll be employment for all. Take, for example, with recycling, right? Recycling has helped women, like women that have gone through gender-based violence. Their husbands have ridiculed them and all that, made them, independent. And we have several case studies towards that. So it's not even just about women, the youth within our communities, right? The teenagers within our communities, having to ensure that everybody has access to decent work, and they are a part of this engagement. With what Motainai Recycling is doing, we've employed so many Oyo State indigents to work in different aspects of waste management, from formal to informal. Recently, we inducted, I think, about 50 street sweepers, and at least 50% of them were women, right? So having to deploy the right framework for proper waste management is really important, because it helps us to fulfill goal 8, right? I've seen lots of innovations around waste management. I was at the World Energy Forum, like this is basically ADSW Sustainability Week in Abu Dhabi, and I saw lots of waste management invention, from mechanized sweeping to data and technology. People are essentially driving technology to not just create employment or decent work, but to also aid people to be able to do the work that is needed. And this brings me to goal 9, right? You'd realize that Nigeria, being an import country, right? Most of what we have, or most of what we rely on comes from other countries. If we added value to the waste management chain, right, it could be one of the industries, or one of the sectors, so to speak, that promotes industrialization, right? And industrialization is so important, because as we head into the next, or of course we are already into the fourth industrial revolution, it's important that we're able to process our own thing, manufacture our own for our people, by our people. It is very, very important. And that's the only way to build resilient infrastructure. So take, for example, recycling. Most of what people do is just to, sort, bill, maybe shred, right? There is no, there are limited opportunities, even though the opportunity is massive, but there are limited companies, rather, doing the work that needs to be done, which is essentially turning it into useful materials, basically upcycling or downcycling, or using it an entirely different material. There's one of my friends is into e-waste recycling, and what it does is to collect lithium batteries from laptops, different, electric devices that uses lithium-ion batteries, and then it puts all the used lithium-ion batteries together to make solar lamps, right? And he's doing so well because 90% of his product is based on recycled materials, right? I know of another friend who turns pure water sachet into beautiful bags, beautiful shoes. These are localized localized sector of industries, right? But they contribute to the overall goal, which is goal 9. So imagine us having to do, imagine, youths having to take that baton and do more, right? To provide solutions that are relevant within their communities. We deliver goal 9. And in so doing, we also fulfill goal 10, of course, 11. Goal 12 is very important. It's based on polluters pay principle. Rwanda is already doing it. No plastic bags. And this created an opportunity for companies to come up with manufacture reusable bags, right? And this is also essential because, take for example, I think one of the most deadly plastic in Nigeria, even in the world, I dare say, is those black nylons, right? It is the possibility of it getting recycled is low. Not that it cannot be recycled, it can, but the possibility of it getting recycled is low because there's not so much the profit, so to speak, with recycling it, right? And it makes up so many of the plastic waste, right? In banning plastic bags, that's not the problem, right? But having to ensure people do what is necessary. If you want to use plastic bags, you pay for that pollution based on the pollution pay principle. If you still want to maintain your status quo behavior, you pay for that decision. And I think this is where policies and enforcement needs to take preeminence for proper waste management techniques. So goal 12 is relevant and can be relevant when policies and enforcement is put in place to ensure the proper waste management. And this is not just to households or to individuals, also companies who are the major culprits, right? Take, for example, Coca-Cola, basically fast-moving consumer goods who have made sensitization a means to get more profit, should be responsible for getting the waste, the plastic waste, out of the environment. They should have some sort of initiative to allow for this. And policies can also be made to ensure that there is a tax, not just to the company, right, but to the consumer, who have decided to, take up that consumption pattern. But ultimately, because we live in a society where, 2/3 of Nigerians live below $1 per day, it might not be a great recommendation to ensure that people are taxed on already taxed materials to pay for. But ultimately, the directive could be to, ensure that these companies are properly taxed to cover up the pollution pay principle and ensure that the post-consumer framework is in line towards the SDGs, so as to ensure the delivery of the waste management framework we so desire. So now to one of the goals that I'm very passionate about. I'm actually passionate about 2 goals, 7 and 13, right? And this goal 13 makes a huge impact on not just the environment per se, right? But also as individuals. If you look at plastic pollution, for example, looking at it from just a top observance, right? You think, oh, what does waste management or plastic pollution have to do with goal 13? And it has everything to do with waste management. I'll just cite one example. Nigeria does not have any engineered landfill, right? Most of all, in fact, 90% of how we dispose waste is through dump sites, right? And because we do not sort our waste, we just dispose everything to the dump site, and most of that waste is organic. And when organic food or organic waste starts to decompose, it emits methane, right? Even though you would refer to them as runaway emissions and all of that, but it is still an emission that can be captured because it affects our environment in a terrible way. This methane is a GHG emission that can even deter us from achieving our NDCs as ratified in the Paris Agreement. So typically what Nigeria has committed to, according to our national timely contributions, is to reduce GHG conditionally by 20% and reduce GHG unconditionally, conditionally by 40%, unconditionally by 20%. So if there is no account of all the GHG emissions being emitted from dump sites, how exactly are we going to achieve that? Because it's not just about changing diesel to solar or installing more solar mini grids and all of that. This emission from our dump sites also needs to be accounted for and captured. Now, if there are landfills or if there is a change in the behavior of people where, organic waste doesn't have to get to the dump site, right? Then we will drastically, reduce that impact. And you would realize from all that I've been saying that the solutions where that has to do with changing the behavior of people is actually the cheapest, right? It's actually the most affordable, because if you go onto the web, the dump site to, construct an engineered landfill, you're talking in millions of dollars, or put a waste to energy facility, you're talking in millions of dollars, even though waste to energy is still relevant. But it can start from where it is being generated to reduce, the resources, the materials, right? The resource and materials put into it. Take, for example, I pick waste from your house. And this is the factual, like, you can take this to the bank. I pick waste from your house. You've not considered the diesel that I've come to use to pick your waste. You've not considered the resource, land, water, all these materials to come pick your waste. And I take that waste to the dump site and I use that waste to constitute another type of emission, another type of pollution. So we have to rethink our approach, right? We have to, take a step back and see how all of this, conventional ways that we do things are impacting the environment. It is really important. Take, for example, plastic, right? In as much as, recycling has been ongoing in Nigeria for the past 10 years or so, right? Even more than a decade. There is still, when you go to the shorelines, right, across Lagos, Akwa Ibom, you find plastic. And this same plastic is, affecting our health, affecting the ocean, the life below water, life on land, affecting every single entity, right? So there's a study that said that because we now have plastics in our food, right? We eat fish, we drink water, ultimately water from underground water and all of that. it has started to cause infertility issues like cancer, make us susceptible to things to sicknesses and to illness that should not even be, be found within our demography, right? And the lifespan, the life expectancy of Nigerians have started to decrease. So it is important that we have proper waste management within our country, from a community level, and then we build it up, as opposed to having all the policies being made at the top, because not all the policies are relevant for the communities that we deal with, right? Not all the it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. So it has to be developed from bottom to top as opposed to top to bottom, right? And this is where I would want to, embolden us to not just consider entrepreneurship as a way to, provide solutions as this, but also look for policy opportunities, that can help us, and as youths, help us to, give that feedback from lived people's experience, right? Because you've experienced it. I mean, everyone has experienced plastic pollution, pollution on a larger scale, improper waste management. All this, like, you're exposed to it. As long as you're a Nigerian, you've encountered it. So with that lived experience, we can make the recommendation that we need to. So there are so many places we can plug ourselves into to help to achieve this. And this is where partnerships for the goals come in, right? So ultimately, this is typically a very summarized way of how the SDGs connect for proper waste management. I would like to take some questions now, and then we continue with the synthesis note. I hope I still have more time.
Just in less than 10 minutes, because we also have some questions on the comment section, which we appreciate you respond to. Okay,
so what I would do is let me take the synthesis note, and I'll come back to the questions. So I'd like to share this with us. I mean, I can share the after the link after this session, but I think it's really relevant. I also see that we have people from different states in Nigeria, right? And apart from Lagos, right? In fact, the whole of Nigeria is not practicing anything close to proper waste management. Yes. Lagos might be close to it, but that's still not the ideal. Even Rwanda is not practicing the kind of waste management that we need in the 21st century. I know so many people use Rwanda as a case study and all of that. But what we are doing in Ibadan, right, as a public-private partnership with the government, is to implement sustainable waste management procedures, sustainable waste management framework and architecture, right, that doesn't just deliver pickup to disposal, right, but delivers behavioral change to sorting, to pick up, to disposal, the entire waste management and value chain back to Cradle, which is using that material that you have collected to do something. Now, in tying all of this into circularity, which is basically, now we typically practice linear economy, but tying everything to a circular economy, nothing goes to waste. There is no need for a landfill. Nothing goes to waste, typically. Every single item has a use. That's the kind of waste management we should be practicing. And studies have shown that when you practice this kind of waste management, right, there are so many opportunities for so many, whether youths, women, so many social opportunities, so many economic opportunities. It is even more
Sorry, dear participants, let's just give facilitator a minute while she comes back on the call. I think that must be a network issue. In line to that, should you have any question, kindly use the comment section on YouTube to drop your questions and answer. And also, after this session, we are going to be having the briefing as regards the community project and all. So please can stay. All right, we are glad to have you back.
okay. So let me just run through. So like I said, I'm sharing one of the most critical documents that has informed the Oyo state government to engage in this sort of partnership, right? So if you look at this picture, this is the status quo in Oyo State, right? Before we intervened. And if you notice, it's like in between houses, like downtown Oyo. Essentially, this is actually what happens because there are no road networks, there is no infrastructure to collect waste and all of that. So what we've started to do is to build capacity and engage designated people within the community that knows the community well, that understands the community, to take charge of waste management within their community. And I'll cite an example with Sabo. So for those who do not stay in Ibadan, Sabo Mokola area is a community of, it's a low-income community, right? It's a marginalized community, and waste kind of like defines the aesthetics there. And this has been ongoing for years, right? It's such a sensitive community because you have it's a mixed community. You have lots of people, immigrants from other states as well. So you basically need to be careful with how you approach the community so that you do not cause a political or social, rift. And mind you, this community has never paid for waste. So the first time we got into this community, we had a stakeholders engagement with them, with the locals and their leaders, and they were really receptive. Now, what we did was we did not suggest what we wanted to do for their community. Obviously, they see how waste, causes, defaces their community and causes so many issues. So they wanted that change, right? But we wanted a situation where we're able to co-produce the solution. So within the community, they had like this black spot. So what a black spot is like an illegal dump site, right? And first we started with clearing the dump site, the illegal dump site, and we appointed people, youth typically within the community, to man that black spot, so to speak. So after clearing and all of that, they started operations, and 7 months, typically 9 months down the line, there is no black spot occurrence in that area. Now we had to move to sensitizing the community. And we did that through social programs like Recyclables for Rewards, where we partnered with different FMCGs, right? Like Nigerian breweries. They gave us products, and then we went into the community, organized the program, and then we sensitized them on why on proper waste management and how to turn their waste to wealth, right? So in collecting the recyclables, we give them the brand items, right? The incentives that these FMCGs had given us. So that also prompted them to want to make change. So we also instituted them paying for waste service. So we pick up 2 times in a week, and they pay what they can afford, because they are of the, their socioeconomic strata is the lowest. So instead of, not just paying anything, because waste is a service that must be paid for, right? Water is a service that should be paid for. Electricity is a service that should be paid for. But what we can do as a sustainable company, and a company that uses the SDGs to, as a framework, as a tool to mark up our KPIs, right, is to ensure that they pay what they can afford, right, and they have the willingness to. So factoring all of this, right, we were able to deliver a better Sabo Mokola. Now, it would have been quite difficult for the government as an entity to do that because of political risks, right? But ultimately, we having to do that provided us the public-private the private company having to do that provided some sort of responsibility, for us to be able to come in and do what is needed while working for the Oyo State. So and the World Bank even recommended that if the government needed to collect revenue from people, because waste is a service that must be paid for, they have to engage, the private sector. Now, I want to, because of time, I will just quickly scroll down to, recommendations, right? So one of the things that we are also working on is a waste-to-energy facility. But the waste-to-energy facility is close to the source, as I mentioned earlier. In markets, because markets are supposed to be daily waste. Hello, can you see my screen? Oh, wow, I wasn't sharing along. Emmanuel, please, could you enable me to share my screen?
Yes, you can do that. You can do that.
Okay. So, like I said, one of the initiatives we're also working on is the waste energy to basically set up facilities close to the source, which is the organic biodigester I talked about earlier. But more interestingly, we also want to turn all the dump sites to waste energy facilities, in the sense that, when organic waste is sorted and recyclables are removed, there are still some products or still some streams that cannot be recycled yet, or are not profitable to be recycled, right? So what we do is take that to the dump site, right? And then process it through our waste to energy facility. So instead of having an open dump site that simultaneously catches fire every now and then, what you have is a waste to energy facility sitting on that same piece of land and converting every other waste that cannot be recycled into power, right? So typically providing access to electricity for populations around these areas. And it's so important because, like I showed you the links between the SDGs, should we deliver a sustainable waste management architecture where circularity is at the forefront, then there'll be no need to essentially use land that should be used to build affordable housing or, build schools and all of that, to continue to convert more land into dump sites. But when we invest in waste to energy systems and even material recovery facilities, it makes a difference. So this is why the public-private partnerships is very important, and this is what we are doing. So with Mutaina Recycling, what we've decided, what we've fashioned our solutions after is sort of service. So in as much as we are delivering waste management for our households, communities, companies, we are also working on other services like the consulting arm that enables us to provide expert advice to companies, to small businesses, which make up 90% of businesses in Oyo State, right? And having to show them what corporate sustainability is, having to help them set up audits so that they can make that behavioral change and make the work easier in delivering sustainable waste management. So imagine the government having to do this. The government would essentially face blockers, right? But having a public-private partnership that carries out the obligations of the government so that everyone is held accountable is the reason why we are doing this, right? And like I said earlier, this material was actually designed for Oyo State, right, by the World Bank, and this is what Oyo State is using the recommendation to improve waste management in Oyo State, and other states too can use it, because ultimately all the states in Nigeria are not practicing sustainable waste management. So you can see this is typically Oyo State, Ibadan, and it still hinges on how the behavior of people. There needs to be an attitudinal change, because this wasn't just dumped by some entity, it was dumped by humans, right? And using the carrot stick approach, we've been providing incentives for people to do the right thing, but you don't expect that people still do the right thing, right? So there's a lot of enforcement coming down on people to actually make them do the right thing. There's been a tribunal that's been set up by the Oyo State government to, properly fine people. And if you want to get more information about this, you can read through the Oyoma law, and essentially it would inform you on what the enforcement measures are. So for a state like Oyo, right, there are laws in place, but it is the implementation, right, that there's a bit of And this is also where we come in. We help the government to implement the policies and the laws that they've set in place. And I want to believe that is typically the same with other states. We have, as Nigeria as a whole has national policies on waste management and all of that, but still state governments are supposed to have to as well. So if this is the narrative and waste management is still a problem, then it has to do with the implementation in itself. So having to leverage initiatives like this, the public private partnerships, also helps to take hold. On a final note, right, I want to talk about the revenue, the roles and responsibilities, right, involved in regulating waste. So there are three roles, there are three entities, right, and I'll name one a very important role per entity. We have the citizen, right? The citizen has a right to make an arrest.
Hello, Ms. Deborah. It seems your network is okay.
Okay, yeah. So, like I said, on a final note, it is your responsibility as a citizen to ensure that you protect your environment. So if you see someone dumping, if you see someone practicing, you call in very obviously civil way, you call the person's attention to what they're doing. And for Oyo State, you can actually report that incident. You can just tag us on Twitter or any of the social media and snap that person, right? And then the local enforcement operatives such as Amotekun can take it up from there. In other states where this doesn't exist, I mean, we are open to partnering. Mutenai Recycling is open to partnering with your state government to help implement that. So if you know someone that can essentially aid that partnership, you can reach out to me. Since if you obviously want this for your state, you can reach out to me, and we can see how that could essentially unfold. So on this note, I will hand over to Emmanuel, so that we can take the questions, right?
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ms. Deborah, and thank you for sharing from your vast wealth of your knowledge. Thank you. Really appreciate this engaging and insightful session. Quickly, we have some questions which we have on the comment section already. I would like to read. The first one is from Ibrahim Giwa. I sincerely love the initiative of converting waste into electricity. I would like you to explain the whole process. Wow, whole process might not be explained yet, just a brief of how that's being done. And there is also a similar question to that. That's from Akintola Akiyemi. He asks, please, can we get a better insight into the biogas projects waste to power and organic waste to electricity projects, which you just mentioned? I think there is also a similar question from Akitola again. He asks if there is any training or skill empowerment program on these great ideas in your company, and how can prospect harness this opportunity. We appreciate you as we attend to this set of questions first before we move to the next round.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Or you could post it in the chat so that I can read it.
It's there. The questions are there.
Okay, I think it's wiped for me because
Oh, all right. We are going to do that again.
Okay. Thank you, Ibrahim. So the converting waste to electricity is quite simple. It's not extensive. So two things. Waste in itself, organic waste has carbon content, right? Similarly, plastic too has some carbon content. So I'll take organic waste first. When you so I would want to convert waste to biogas with organic waste. So take, for example, food waste. When you mix food waste, blend it, turn it into a puree, right? You pour it into a system, right, called a biodigester, where, has been programmed to convert the carbon being generated from carbon embedded in the food waste itself to a gas called biogas, right? And then biogas is trapped, right, to, power, you can use to power, you can run it as a gas to power generators, but you have to change the engine of the generator. So take, for example, a diesel generator. Clark Energy does this. Change a diesel generator to a gas generator, basically the engine, and then you can run the gas into the engine to generate electricity. But if you're using biogas directly, you can't exactly compress it into the way we compress the gas, the cooking gas, but you can actually use it as cooking gas. It's just that you won't be able to compress it in a way that it can be, sold as cooking gas. LPG gas is being sold. So you have to use it on site, right? Which is typically the same way we did for the community, the rural island communities. So we just channeled like the sewage to a kitchenette, so to speak. The sewage, the biodigester, the gas being generated from the biodigester to a kitchenette, and then using pipes actually, and then the gas powered a set of stoves, right? So it is pretty straightforward. It's not anything complicated. In fact, you can even do it in your home. That's the beauty about it. You generate waste, obviously, because you cook, you eat food. The waste that you are putting into your basket, your waste basket, put it in another bin, right? Blend the waste, mix it with water, turn it into a puree, get a small biodigester. I know I have a friend that sells all this small biodigester. Feed the food waste puree into it, and you are generating gas. You don't need to buy gas anymore. And even if you have to buy, it will be, you would essentially have like an hybrid situation where you are not spending so much on gas. So typically, if you use your LPG gas for, say, 1 month, you end up using it for like 2-3 months because you have an alternative, right? The only downside to this is that the more food waste you generate, the more access to gas that you have, right? So another thing is, I don't think I mentioned it, but the 5 hours, very, very important. The 5 hours are very important. Refuse, reduce, recycle, reuse, and one other one. So on top of that hierarchy is actually refusing, then you have reduce. So if whatever you can't refuse, you reduce. Whatever you can't reduce, you reuse. Whatever you can, in fact, recycling is like the last, or in last hour of the hierarchy. So I personally recommend that you do not cook or you do not harness food in a way that you have to dispose so much of it. So this is where, having to make use of that hierarchy is very important. But ultimately, it's very simple to use to convert waste into energy, be it cooking gas or electricity. You can also send me, I have some materials, I can share one of the research that I've done. You can send me a LinkedIn message. I'll drop my LinkedIn details in the chat, and then we can continue from there. So to the second question, it's true solutions around waste. Okay, so yes, I totally agree, Toby. I totally agree. It is true that technology innovations, waste management provides jobs, right? But technology innovations displace employees across the value chain of a service or product. How do we strike a balance? When I mentioned that technology is secondary, humans are first. And I think this is the issue we are having with artificial intelligence. There's been some sort of global disposition. Everybody's kind of scared that AI will take over their jobs. I mean, we can see the fallout in the tech industry and all of that. It's not like people don't need tech. It's just that if you used to be, say, for example, a content creator and you have ChatGPT doing your work, right? What are we consulting for? Yeah, what's the reason that you have been employed when ChatGPT is doing your work? So ultimately, we have to, as innovators, we have to consistently think about how we can deliver human-centered technologies, right? So take, for example, with ChatGPT. ChatGPT will still need a quality assurance method or quality personnel, right? So we as humans, we have to evolve when it comes to retaining our jobs, or it comes to keeping our jobs, or we have to evolve to be able to ensure that we balance this technology innovation. That's on a holistic perspective, but dialing it down into the relevance of waste management and technology innovations. We try, what I try as much as possible to encourage, because when you empower people, you're not just empowering them as an individual, you're empowering their families, you're empowering their children, you're empowering their community, right? With our mobile app, because we have a mobile app on Mutena Recycling, right? In as much as the technology aids us to essentially deliver our work, even within pickup, because we use GIS to do our pickups and arrange our pickups, it only makes us effective. We position technology in a way that makes us effective, it makes us deliver, it eradicates the need for errors, but we don't allow technology to replace the value of humans. It's very essential. And that is why human-centered technologies is very important. So we leverage these human-centered technologies to deliver our solutions. So we don't just rely on technology to do this. And it's very, very important. So in striking a balance, I think sustainability is the watchword, having to use sustainability as some sort of guide to help, or some sort of guideline to help you deliver. Should you find a place where obviously there are sorters, like there are, how will I put it, robotic sorters. Well, we can't even afford it right now, but if it becomes like the go-to, I'm very sure that we would want to continue to use women sorters, because it contributes more to the environment, sorry, not the environment, but to like sustainability itself, fulfilling environmental, social, and economics, right? These women who are primary managers within their homes can actually, help their communities out of poverty. Then to Uzwamaka's question, some people dispose their waste through burning. Of course, absolutely. Burying, burning, open burning. In fact, it is how will I put it? Like, you will essentially face the law if you burn or you bury. Well, that's what is in the Oyoma law. That's what we practice. So when we catch any individual burning or burying their waste, they actually face the tribunal. So it is punishable by law, and it also poses several environmental challenges. When you bury, you are contaminating underground water. When you burn, you are polluting the environment. You are increasing the occurrence of GHG, greenhouse gas emissions in the environment, which ultimately contributes to climate change. You are also putting the people's basically the people around you, you're putting their health in jeopardy, because it constitutes to air pollution, and air pollution has PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 causes different from lung cancer to different airborne illnesses. So I guess that's all the questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for the responses, and thank you for the fact that you had to do this extensively and you took your time. We really appreciate you, Ma. And we hope to get to connect with you, just like they're already asking that they would like to connect to also learn further from your wealth of knowledge. And I will appreciate to know which of these platforms you prefer they can further engage with you. Hello, Ma.
I can hear you now. I lost you for a bit.
All right. I said we appreciate to know which of this platform the actors can get to connect with you and also share and learn more from you.
Okay, I can drop my LinkedIn. Let me just copy it and post in the comment section.
All right.
Yes, I already did.
Okay. Okay. We sincerely appreciate this. Thank you very much. We never take it for granted, and we believe that it's going to really help each and every actors out there who are working towards various aspects of waste management and also climate action, and also in line to renewable energy, which has been your major game. And we really appreciate the time once again on behalf of the leadership of Sustainable Development Solutions Network. Thank you for accepting our invite, and most importantly, we know how engaging the period and your activities, but despite that, you took the time to facilitate today's session. We look forward to have you more in our forthcoming sessions and also get to connect with you furthermore. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks.
All right, our dear actors, we believe it's been a great value and a great time today, and it's been a great session and a value for your time indeed. Right about now, just quickly, the attendance link and evaluation form has been shared with us it has been pinned. I can see that it's been pinned on the comment section as well. It's very important for each and everyone to fill the form, give feedback, your honest feedback. I know some of us have been complaining about the link, and today I think the link is more responsive than before. But I'll quickly share some briefing as regards the community project, and this has to do with the climate education, the environmental campaign and sensitization, which we are meant to commence on later in the month of April. But it's very important, I just share the first, that's the main activity. There's one other activity we are going to have after the 5th masterclass session. That's the final session for March. We are going to be having the attendance and evaluation, the attendance and evaluation, assessment and evaluation. And then, knowledge evaluation is to test our knowledge about all what you've learned all through the assessment, our masterclass sessions. And basically, I will speak more about the phase 2. Phase 2 project is more focused on community development project, and also it's in 3 different dimensions. Like I said, the very first part is because this has to be an interstate project, and we're also trying to see how you can achieve it perfectly to be more impactful and more innovative. Definitely, there are a lot of, I remember during the last school, some of them did some cleanup projects, some of them did some environmental campaign and sensitization. Some even went on radio for like a month. Every week, they keep going on radio to do campaign and sensitization about various aspects of climate and environment. And some did tree planting, just like I mentioned. And it now depends on whatever your state decides to do. So you all belong to your state groups. You are meant to discuss and brainstorm. Most importantly, you have to first ideate and identify a particular problem that's been that people, most especially the masses, are facing in that locale. It's very important for you to identify a particular problem. It can be targeted towards any of the SDGs, and just like Ms. Deborah has did an extensive overview relating the waste and pollution to each of these SDGs. So you can target it to any of the SDGs, which you are going to create a solution to. So that will be your community project. In so doing, we are going to submit a proposal which the project committee are going to review and approve. This has a date already, and I remember someone shared that submission of proposals started, that submission of an approval of proposal for school projects and community projects started 15th, and that's to March 31st of March. So please get engaged, connect with each other on the YouTube, on your WhatsApp platforms, and brainstorm on what exactly you want to do. And the second part is the climate education. The climate education is going to be an interstate webinar. You've been having series of learnings in different modules, various aspects, and learning various. Last week we had something on. Forest and biodiversity conservation, and this week too has been awesome. I can see someone saying that today's session has been the very best session for her ever since she has commenced. So you are going to have a webinar which you have to choose a particular topic, you have to choose a particular date and a time in which you want to do that. What the program manager are doing from their end is they are going to share a calendar with you, which is going to give various timelines which you can select from. And this time is once a state are unavailable for another state. So once they share that, please, I will advise you do that as soon as possible. And you also to choose a particular topic and select a date. The platform which you are going to be using is the Zoom platform, which the SDSN are going to host you all through the project. I know that we have like 34 states that are represented in this project, in this cohort. So it's very important for each and everyone to ensure you do that as soon as possible. I think those are the basic information I have to share. And if there are other questions which you would like to ask me, you can drop those questions on the comment section. And I can read someone's question when it comes to, he was asking he asked a question as regards mentoring and publication as well. And that is going to come up in phase 3 of this project, because at the end of this project, the goal basically is for you to launch a climate innovation, and which you are going to have mentors that are going to guide you, and they are also going to share their vast knowledge to see how you can scale up this project. I am always saying this because it's something that is working and it has been a blessing to a lot of people. I remember like 2 different ladies that launched their solution last year. That same innovation which they launched took them to COP27, took them to Germany, and 2 of them are also going for the UN Water Conference, which is holding this month, and they have been doing excellently well. So this is a very good platform for you to ideate and launch that good solutions, which is going to contribute to solving the global climate crisis. And believe me or not, there are a lot of grants. I remember that recently, the first week of March, we shared a series of grants which you can apply for. But the truth is, if you don't have a scalable solution, if you don't have an innovation that's very feasible, investors are not going to, they can't fund your innovation. So it's very important for you to have something realistic you are doing. And I also know that some of us are already having good, we have some ideas which we are already in paper. Yeah, but it's high time for you to get into action. So I will just quickly attend to your questions if there is any of such. But regarding the WhatsApp platforms, please, the admin are going to share the direct link to the WhatsApp platform so that you can join. For those who are still having issues to join the WhatsApp platform, hopefully it's a technical issue because a lot of people are also joined the WhatsApp platform. So I don't know if there are other questions, and if there are none, it's been a very long section we've had today, and I won't like to take it longer beyond 12 because we also have Muslim veterans that are going to pray by noon. And if there are other urgent project questions or area of concern, please, you can reach out to any of the program managers and they will address it. But most importantly, as you are joining your stage groups, please, the most important thing you have to do this week is to assign and nominate a representative. Your representative, a leader amongst you. You can do this by voting, you can do this by volunteering, anyhow you want to do it. And there is a number which has been shared with you, which you have to send the name and contact of that person to. So he will be your spokesperson in terms of communication with the program managers. I believe it's been a wonderful day indeed. Wish you a productive weekend, and please stay safe and ensure you cast your vote tomorrow. I know that there are some states that we are going to have the election tomorrow. It's not just about presidency alone. Also, across the local level, leadership is very important. So we all have to be involved with this. Please stay safe and enjoy your weekend. All right, see you next week. Bye for now.
We are facing an existential crisis.
Unlike anything the world has ever seen.
We need to take action.
Everyone has to stand up!
The warning is not a new one.
Our world faces a triple planetary crisis of climate change, nature loss and pollution.
For generations, humanity, often without realizing it, has been destroying the natural world. In the name of progress, we have polluted the Earth's oceans, chopped down its forests and clouded its skies. Today, nature and our own survival rest on a knife's edge.
It's time to ratchet up the action that we need to have at the country level.
The United Nations Environment Programme was established with one goal in mind: to unite the world in saving our planet.
It is clear that the environmental crisis which is confronting the world will profoundly alter the future destiny of our planet.
For 5 decades, UNEP has used science and its mandate to bring the world together to help nations find solutions to grave environmental threats.
What is this pollution that we have heard so much about?
The Mediterranean is sick. It's being poisoned slowly but steadily for those who need it most.
The 1970s found a world grappling with an unprecedented crisis of pollution. Could the seemingly irreparable damage be undone? UNEP inspired the world to take action, preventing oil spills and toxic discharge by ships, uniting 143 coastal states to limit ocean pollution and save marine life, reducing air pollution and ending the scourge of acid rain. But soon, the world would face its biggest environmental challenge yet.
The destruction of the ozone layer on a global scale is no longer just a theory. The hole over the Antarctica is no longer an isolated seasonal phenomenon.
If the breach continued to grow, the planet would suffer lethal levels of ultraviolet radiation, harming human health, biodiversity, and climate. In 1987, UNEP facilitated the Montreal Protocol. Over 30 countries agreed to phase out the production of almost 100 ozone-depleting substances. The protocol remains one of the greatest achievements of multilateralism.
All nations gathered here to be proud of what we had achieved.
This success set the tone for a series of powerful accords, limiting the movement of toxic waste across borders, protecting the Earth from dangerous, long-lasting chemicals, and restricting the international trade in mercury. Most recently, in 2021, UNEP finished a 2-decade-long campaign to rid the world of highly toxic leaded petrol, saving an estimated 1 million lives each year. As the world grappled with pollution and waste, another crisis was brewing.
I have dreamt of seeing the great herds of wild animals, jungles and rainforests full of birds and butterflies. But now I wonder if they will even exist for my children to see.
Poaching and habitat loss were pushing some of the world's most iconic animals to the brink of extinction. Driven by science, UNEP supported a series of international treaties, limiting and in some cases banning the trade of endangered species, safeguarding migratory animals, expanding protected areas, and increasing financing for biodiversity protection. The seminal Earth Summit in Brazil introduced the idea of sustainable development.
This is an historical moment for the mobilization of all peoples of the world.
Over the last 5 decades, UNEP has helped more than 100 countries enshrine the right to a healthy environment in their constitutions and produced scientific studies to guide member states in their decision-making. In 2012, a new international body was established to provide scientific data on biodiversity in a joint effort from UNEP and other UN organizations. In 2019, it found that 1 million species face the threat of extinction, underscoring the urgency to act.
Every action we take alters the earth that future generations will inherit.
The world is starting to recognize the effects of planetary warming, but UNEP began sounding the alarm 3 decades ago. As early as 1988, UNEP and the World Meteorological Organization launched the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. For over 30 years, IPCC science has helped member states counter climate change, earning the body a Nobel Prize for its work. UNEP-backed studies have informed some of the planet's most crucial climate accords. These include a 1992 agreement that set a template for curbing greenhouse gas emissions, followed by the Kyoto Protocol and the landmark 2015 Paris Agreement.
I'm proud to announce that 175 parties have signed the Paris Agreement.
UNEP has also mobilized 450 banks, insurers and investors to help create a more sustainable world.
We don't want fossil fuels anymore.
A lot has happened in the last 50 years, but it's the next 10 that will be pivotal for life on this planet.
But in fact, what you and I and other ordinary people around the world can